reason 13% of them did go back into juvenile delinquency was because they never got on the diet. Now, somewhere in this time period, Barbara marries a man named Paul Stitt. Paul's job at that point was to come up with chemicals that could be added to foods that would stimulate the appetite for that particular food. He worked for one of the 4 big food companies, and he was a biochemist, and he actually wrote a book, which is also an extremely good book, called Beating the Food Giants. Now, one day, Paul was looking in the mirror, and he said to himself, what you're doing is wrong. This is not a good thing. And he actually walked away from his job with that food company, and he decided that he would start a bakery, and it was an all-natural bakery. That bakery still exists today in Manitowoc, Wisconsin. And he and Barbara proceeded to produce really good, wholesome baked goods. Bread with lots of fiber and other things, just full of fiber, full of flax, full of things that are healthy and nutritious. Now, what they're doing today is even more interesting. At some point, Paul and Barbara, after they opened their bakery in Manitowoc, went to Appleton, Wisconsin, and talked to the school system there. They told them that they would like to take one of their schools over and be able to handle all of the dietary in that school. At this point, you need to understand that Barbara's been written up in Time magazine and in Wall Street Journal, and she had become very well known for her study, if you will, that she did as a probation officer. So she took her credentials to the school system, and they agreed to give Paul and Barbara a school. In fact, they gave them an alternative school. Now, we know what that means. That means that they got the worst kind of school that you can get. In fact, this school was so bad that it had to have a police officer on the school grounds all school day because the school was so violent. So Paul and Barbara go into this school, and they get rid of the pop machines, the candy machines, they put in water machines, and they put in a great big, huge, beautiful salad bar. And that becomes the emphasis for the school lunches, is that salad bar. I'm sure they still feed the kids other things. I don't think that they made them vegetarians, but the emphasis became whole foods and good, healthy foods that were nutritionally dense. So they interview the principal after the first year, and the principal talks about the fact that every year she has a form she has to fill out, how many violent incidences, how many drug arrests, how many suicides, how many dropouts, and the list goes on and on and on. She said every year we have numbers behind every single one of these categories. She said this year, after 1 year of the dietary change in the school, how many violent incidences? 0. How many drug arrests? 0. How many suicides? 0. How many dropouts? 0. It only took 1 school year to turn that school around. 1 school year serving those kids good, healthy food. Fascinating. This is not the only time that diet has shown to have a radical effect on juvenile delinquents. There was another study that was done because of a group of young people who were living in a certain home in South Dakota, and the social worker for that home noticed that those kids were doing much better than any other home that was caring for juvenile delinquents in that area. He found that that home had a diet that consisted mainly of homegrown vegetables and whole foods. I just want to share with you today what the typical life for a kid is. You know, in our world today, in our schools today, kids are served pop. In fact, pop machines are right in the schools. Fascinating book to read called Fast Food Nation by Eric Schlosser details this. He talks about how Pepsi-Cola and Coca-Cola go into school systems and vie for that school system so that they can put their product into that school. I have a newspaper article here written from Statesman's Journal, January of 2003. It's from Sailor Kaiser School System, and this is very interesting. PepsiCo's foray into Salem Kaiser schools raises ethical and moral questions. Is public education now up for sale? Those who defend PepsiCo seemingly have forgotten that public schools are meant to practice what they preach and teach. West Salem's own parent handbook outlines a zero-tolerance policy for the school